General Marcus Rains was a man known for precision, order, and discipline. Every soldier under his command respected him, but also feared his sharp eyes. To him, rules weren't suggestions, they were law. Yet lately, one young soldier had caught his attention in a way he couldn't ignore. Private Daniel Cole, a quiet and unassuming recruit, seemed to vanish after lights out. His reports were spotless, his drills flawless, but something about him didn't add up. One evening, while reviewing the daily logs, the general noticed Daniel had requested no family leave, received no letters, and barely spoke to anyone. For most soldiers, that wasn't unusual, but there was a restlessness in Daniel's eyes that made Marcus suspicious. Where did this boy disappear to every night? Determined to find out, the general made a decision few of his rank would dare. Instead of ordering surveillance or summoning Daniel for questioning, he would follow the soldier himself. That night, long after the barracks had quieted, Marcus slipped into the shadows, his heavy boots muffled on the gravel. From a distance, he watched Daniel slip out of the compound, careful and deliberate, moving like someone who had practiced this routine many times. Marcus's instincts sharpened. This wasn't an act of rebellion. There was something deeper at play. He adjusted his cap, keeping far enough not to be detected. The young soldier's steps led toward the forest just beyond the training grounds. Each crunch of twigs beneath Daniel's feet sent a surge of tension through the general's chest. What was he hiding? A secret rendezvous, contraband, treachery? The general's jaw tightened as he whispered to himself, "You're hiding something, Cole, and tonight I'm going to find out what—" The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, its tall pines swaying under the moonlight. General Rains kept a measured distance, every movement calculated, every step deliberate. He had stalked enemies on foreign soil, tracked insurgents through deserts and jungles, but tonight he was tailing one of his own men. That irony was not lost on him. Private Daniel Cole moved with surprising stealth for a young soldier. His posture was low, his steps precise, almost as if he had training beyond what the base provided. Marcus's suspicion deepened. The boy wasn't wandering aimlessly, he had a purpose. After several minutes, Daniel paused near a clearing. He knelt, brushed leaves aside, and revealed a small metal box tucked beneath the roots of an old oak tree. The general's pulse quickened. A hidden cache, smuggled goods, classified documents. But what Daniel did next only thickened the mystery. He opened the box carefully and pulled out a small notebook. The soldier flipped through its worn pages by the pale light of the moon, then began writing furiously, as though pouring his very soul into those pages. General Rains frowned, his hand instinctively resting on the holster at his side. Was this some kind of code, a secret journal, or worse, enemy communication? Suddenly Daniel froze. His head turned slightly, ears sharp, as though he sensed another presence. The general held his breath, his body blending into the shadows of the trees. A soldier's instincts were sharp, too sharp to dismiss. For a tense moment, Marcus feared he'd been discovered. But Daniel, after a quick scan of the woods, returned to his writing, his hands trembling as if every word carried unbearable weight. The general narrowed his eyes. Whatever was in that notebook, it was no ordinary journal. The night grew colder, but General Rains stayed rooted in the shadows, his gaze locked on the young soldier hunched over that notebook. Daniel's hands shook with urgency, his face pale under the silver light. He wasn't writing casually. He was confessing something, unburdening himself onto those fragile pages. Marcus shifted slightly, straining to read even a fragment, but the distance was too great. He considered stepping closer, but years of battlefield discipline kept him still. To move recklessly could spook the boy, and then the truth would vanish into secrecy again. After nearly 20 minutes, Daniel closed the notebook, pressed it to his chest and whispered something Marcus barely caught. For her. Always for her. Then, with surprising tenderness, he tucked the notebook back inside the box, carefully covering it with leaves and soil before standing. Her. Who was her? A lover? A family member? The general frowned. Daniel had no recorded family visits, no photos on his bunk, nothing in his personal file but a string of commendations and a note that his parents were deceased. The contradiction gnawed at Marcus. Soldiers without attachments were rare, but soldiers hiding attachments were dangerous. As Daniel turned to head back toward the barracks, Marcus caught sight of something else. the faint glisten of tears streaking down the boy's cheeks. That sight struck the general harder than he expected. Soldiers were trained to fight, endure, and conceal weakness. For a private to cry alone in the woods? It hinted at a wound no training manual could mend. The general's suspicions sharpened, but so did his curiosity. This wasn't the behavior of a traitor. This was the behavior of a young man haunted by something far deeper. And Marcus Raines vowed silently, "I'll uncover the truth, no matter what it costs." Back in his quarters, General Raines removed his uniform jacket and set it neatly on the chair, but his mind was anything but orderly. The image of Daniel in the forest, clutching that notebook like it was his lifeline, wouldn't leave him. Every instinct told Marcus this wasn't ordinary disobedience. It was something personal, buried deep. He sat at his desk, flipping through Daniel Cole's file again. Clean record, no disciplinary actions. Excellent scores in marksmanship and strategy. Commended twice for bravery during drills. And yet, no family contact, no letters received, no personal effects besides standard-issue gear. The absence was too perfect, like a soldier scrubbed clean of any attachments. Marcus leaned back, tapping a finger against the file. For her, always for her. The words replayed like a riddle in his head. Who was her? And why did Daniel feel the need to hide his devotion in the woods at night? Sleep was impossible. At dawn, Marcus walked the training grounds, watching Daniel from a distance. The young man went through drills flawlessly, his movements sharp, his focus unshakable. To anyone else he looked like the perfect soldier, but Marcus now saw the cracks, eyes that avoided too much contact, shoulders carrying more than the weight of a rifle. When training ended, Marcus considered calling him into his office. A direct question could unravel the mystery instantly, but something in the general resisted. Soldiers under interrogation gave rehearsed answers. Truth revealed under observation, truth stumbled upon, was more honest, so Marcus decided to keep following. Quietly, patiently. As Daniel walked away toward the mess hall, unaware of his watchful shadow, the general whispered under his breath, "Whatever you're hiding, soldier, it's eating you alive. And I need to know why." Night returned, and with it came the quiet hum of insects and the muted rustle of the barracks settling into silence. General Raines waited, cloaked in patience, as his soldiers drifted into sleep. But his eyes never left Daniel's bunk. Sure enough, just past midnight, the young soldier rose again, quiet as a shadow, and slipped out into the night. Marcus followed at a distance, his boots sinking softly into the dirt. This time, Daniel didn't take the direct path to the forest. He moved faster, almost as though urgency pushed him forward. His figure cut through the moonlight like a man driven by something unseen. The general tracked him deeper into the woods, beyond the clearing with the oak tree. Branches scratched against Marcus's uniform, but he pressed forward silently, unwilling to lose sight of his target. Daniel finally stopped near a small stream, where the water's gentle rush echoed through the stillness. To Marcus's surprise, Daniel knelt at the bank, pulled something from beneath his shirt, a worn photograph, and placed it gently on the ground. He bowed his head, lips moving in a prayer Marcus couldn't fully hear. The general edged closer, his breath shallow. "I'll make you proud. I promise," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. He pressed the photograph to his forehead, tears spilling freely now. The general's chest tightened. This wasn't treachery. This was grief. This was devotion. But to whom? Daniel tucked the photo back into his shirt and sat staring at the stream, shoulders trembling under the weight of memories only he carried. For a soldier so disciplined, so flawless in daylight, the sight was jarring. Marcus exhaled slowly. He had followed seeking betrayal. Instead, he found a secret pain. And for the first time the general wondered, had he been watching a soldier, or a broken son? The following morning, General Raines sat at the edge of the parade grounds, watching his men assemble. The sun gleamed against polished boots and straightened backs, yet his gaze lingered only on Daniel. The boy stood tall, rifle in hand, every movement precise, no hint of the tears Marcus had witnessed hours earlier by the stream. But the photograph, that detail gnawed at him. Who was in that picture? A lost love, a mother, a sister, someone Daniel was forbidden to remember openly. Soldiers carried pain, yes, but this felt different, secret, deliberate, hidden. Marcus's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Captain Harris, his second-in-command. "Sir, you've been watching Cole an awful lot lately. Something wrong?" The general's expression hardened. "Just evaluating consistency." "Dismissed." Harris gave a sharp nod and moved away, but the question lingered. Why hadn't Marcus simply confronted Daniel? Why this obsession with following rather than commanding? Perhaps, deep down, Marcus feared that demanding answers would crush the fragile truth before it surfaced naturally. Later that evening, Marcus devised a plan. Instead of following from the shadows again, he would test Daniel within the base. He arranged night maneuvers, assigning Daniel to a squad positioned near the woods. If the boy was truly hiding something dangerous, he would slip. But Daniel didn't. He performed perfectly, leading his squad through drills with flawless discipline. No hesitation, no weakness. By dawn, his men respected him even more. Yet when the exercise ended, Marcus noticed Daniel's hand instinctively brush his chest pocket, right where the photograph had been hidden the night before. A small gesture, but telling. The general narrowed his eyes. The mystery wasn't about what Daniel did in the field, it was about what he carried in his heart. And Marcus was determined to uncover it. By the third night, General Rains was restless. He had followed soldiers into enemy lines, through smoke and fire, but never had one young private unsettled him so much. Every instinct told him to drag Daniel into his office and demand answers, yet something, an invisible restraint, kept him back. That evening, Daniel repeated his ritual, slipping out when the barracks fell quiet. Marcus shadowed him again, but this time he caught more of the whispers carried on the wind. Daniel knelt by the oak tree, clutching the hidden notebook, and murmured, "If only you could see me now. I'm trying, I swear I am, but it's hard without you." The general's chest tightened. It wasn't the language of treason. It was the language of longing, of grief. Still, Marcus needed confirmation. He stepped forward, just enough for a twig to snap beneath his boot. Daniel's head shot up, eyes scanning the darkness like a startled animal. "Who's there?" Marcus froze, every muscle tense. The young soldier's hand went instinctively to his sidearm, but he didn't draw it. Instead, he waited, listening. When no answer came, Daniel exhaled shakily and returned to his writing, though his shoulders remained stiff. The general retreated into the shadows, his heartbeat heavier than expected. He had come within seconds of revealing himself, of forcing a confrontation. But the sight of Daniel's trembling hands stopped him. Back at his quarters, Marcus poured himself a drink he didn't touch. His thoughts churned. A leader was supposed to maintain distance, to uphold order without sentiment. Yet Marcus felt drawn into Daniel's secret, as though exposing it might shatter not only the soldier, but himself as well. So for now, the confrontation was deferred, but not forever. Days passed, and General Rains carried the weight of 2 lives, his duties as commander and his silent vigil over Daniel Cole. The dual role wore on him. He drilled the unit harder, barked sharper orders, but his eyes still tracked the young private's every move. Then came the storm. A late-night thunder roared across the base, rain hammering the roofs like artillery fire. Most soldiers stayed sheltered, but Marcus knew instinctively Daniel wouldn't. He threw on his coat and followed the muddy trail to the woods. There, under the pouring rain, Daniel was on his knees before the oak tree. The notebook lay open, its pages smearing with water. His voice was louder this time, desperate, broken. "Why did you leave me? Why did you have to go? I can't carry this alone anymore." Marcus's heart clenched. The soldier who appeared unshakable by day was unraveling by night. The storm masked the general's approach, and for the first time he stepped closer. Daniel clutched the photograph against his chest, sobbing openly. His shoulders trembled with years of grief compressed into this single night. The general's boots squelched in the mud, and Daniel spun around, eyes wide, caught. For a heartbeat, silence drowned out the storm. "Sir?" Daniel's voice cracked, horror flooding his features. He staggered to his feet, snapping to attention, even with tears streaming down his face. "General Rains, sir, But words failed him. Marcus stared at the boy, drenched and shaking, and something inside him broke. This wasn't an act of insubordination. It was the human heart, stripped raw. The confrontation he had avoided was here, unavoidable. For the first time, Marcus spoke the words he had swallowed for nights. Private Cole. Who are you mourning? Daniel froze, the storm pelting his face as though the heavens themselves demanded an answer. His mouth opened, then closed again, his throat tight with words he had buried for too long. The photograph trembled in his hand, water streaking the image until it blurred. Finally, in a choked whisper, he said, "My sister, sir." The general's eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected that. "Your sister?" Daniel nodded, his voice breaking with every word. "Her name was Emily. She raised me after our parents died. She worked 3 jobs to keep me in school, to keep food on the table. She gave everything, and when I enlisted, she told me she was proud, said I was her hero." His voice faltered. He pressed the photograph tighter to his chest, as though afraid the storm might wash her away. "But while I was in training," Daniel continued, his body shaking, "she got sick, cancer. I didn't know how bad it was. She didn't tell me because she wanted me to focus here. By the time I found out, it was too late. She died alone, sir. Without me there." The words hit Marcus like a bullet. He saw not a soldier, but a boy crushed beneath guilt. Every secret trip into the woods, every tear, every whispered vow, it all made sense now. Daniel looked up through wet lashes, eyes pleading. "I come here every night to talk to her, to tell her I'm still fighting, that I'll make her proud. But it feels like no matter what I do, I've already failed." The general's throat tightened. For once, he had no command to give, no discipline to enforce. Only silence, heavy and human, filled the space between them. For a long moment the storm seemed to hush, as if nature itself bowed to the weight of Daniel's confession. General Rains stood still, rain dripping from the brim of his cap, his chest heavy with emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He saw himself in the boy. Years ago, when he was fresh in uniform, burying grief beneath duty. Marcus had lost comrades, brothers in arms, even his own father before enlisting. Each loss had been folded, hidden, locked away behind an iron wall of discipline. But watching Daniel break before him tore a hole through that armor. "You didn't fail her, son," Marcus said quietly, his voice steadier than he felt. "You chose to serve. That was her pride, not her burden." Daniel's jaw clenched, tears mixing with rain. "But I wasn't there. I should have been—" The general stepped closer, lowering his tone. "Listen to me. Every soldier carries ghosts, the ones we couldn't save, the ones we left behind. But you honor them not by drowning in guilt, but by living the life they wanted for you. Emily wanted you to be here. She gave her life so you could be—" The boy's shoulders shook as the truth cut deeper than any reprimand could. For the first time, Marcus placed a hand on his soldier's shoulder. It wasn't the grip of authority, but of shared humanity. "I followed you because I thought you were hiding betrayal," Marcus admitted. "Instead, I found a brother in grief." Daniel's eyes widened. "Sir," the general's gaze hardened, though compassion glowed beneath it. "But hear me, Cole. You can't carry this alone anymore. You're a soldier in my unit. That means your pain is mine to bear too." "Understood?" Daniel swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Yes, sir." The storm had slowed to a drizzle, the forest alive with the dripping of rain from heavy branches. General Rains and Private Daniel stood facing each other, the weight of their silence deeper than any battlefield order. For the first time, their relationship wasn't defined by rank, but by shared humanity. Daniel lowered his gaze, his fists trembling at his sides. "Sir, I didn't want anyone to know. I thought if they saw me like this, weak, broken, they'd lose respect. Soldiers follow strength, not sorrow." Marcus's expression softened. "You're wrong, son. Real strength isn't about never breaking. It's about what you do after you've been broken." Daniel blinked, tears brimming again, though this time not from despair, but from something lighter, freer. He nodded slowly. The general drew a long breath, feeling the weight of command shift inside him. He had spent years believing a leader must be stone, untouchable, unshakable. Yet here was proof that soldiers needed more than discipline. They needed someone willing to see their scars. "Cole," Marcus said firmly, "from now on, you don't go into these woods alone. If you need to grieve, you grieve. If you need to write, you write. But you'll do it knowing your general stands behind you, not in the shadows watching." Daniel's lips parted in disbelief. You'd stand with me, sir? Marcus nodded. Every time. Because you're not just a soldier under my command. You're a man carrying a promise. And I'll make sure you keep it. Daniel's breath hitched. For the first time in months, the crushing weight on his chest lifted. He straightened, not out of obligation, but out of pride. And as they walked back through the thinning rain, Marcus knew the boy was no longer walking alone. The days that followed carried a different rhythm. General Rains no longer watched Daniel from the shadows. He walked beside him. The transformation was subtle at first. During drills, Marcus noticed the young soldier's posture wasn't forced anymore. It carried a quiet strength born not from fear of failure, but from a promise honored. One evening, Marcus found Daniel by the oak tree again. But this time, the general didn't hide. He stepped openly into the clearing, boots crunching against fallen leaves. Daniel stood quickly, saluting, his notebook clutched at his side. At ease, Marcus said softly. I told you, you don't stand here alone anymore. Daniel hesitated, then slowly placed the photograph against the roots of the oak. He knelt, whispering words Marcus couldn't fully hear, but this time the boy's voice wasn't cracked by sorrow. It was steadier, filled with determination. When Daniel finished, he rose to find the general waiting. No words were exchanged. Instead, Marcus gave a single solemn nod, an unspoken salute to the sister who had given everything. Daniel's throat tightened, but he returned the gesture, eyes shining with gratitude. From then on, their bond spread quietly through the ranks. The men noticed the change, Daniel's confidence rising, the general's presence carrying a new kind of weight. Respect deepened, not because Marcus barked orders louder, but because he carried himself as a man who understood the burdens his soldiers bore. One night, sitting alone in his quarters, Marcus opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph of his own father, long buried under years of duty. He hadn't spoken to that memory in decades, but now, with Daniel's story echoing in his heart, he whispered, I haven't forgotten you, I promise. The morning sun rose over the base, its golden light stretching across the parade grounds. Soldiers assembled in perfect formation, boots striking the dirt in rhythm. But today felt different. Today, General Marcus Rains didn't just see a line of uniformed men. He saw human beings, each carrying stories, wounds, and ghosts that discipline alone could never erase. At the front of the ranks stood Private Daniel Cole. His chin was lifted, his shoulders squared, but not with the brittle rigidity of a soldier hiding his pain. Instead, he stood tall with purpose, with a quiet fire that burned brighter than before. Marcus addressed the unit, his voice steady, commanding. Yet beneath every word, Daniel heard something few others would recognize, a man who now understood the weight of hidden grief and the strength it could forge. Discipline and honor will always guide us, Marcus said, eyes sweeping across the ranks. But never forget, what makes us strong isn't just the uniform, it's the heart behind it. The men straightened, absorbing the words, though none could guess how much truth lay in them. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Marcus approached Daniel. He didn't speak, didn't give orders. Instead, he simply placed a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. No words were needed. In that silent gesture, Daniel felt more respect, more acknowledgement than any medal could give. That night, Daniel returned to the oak tree one last time. The general followed, openly this time. Together they placed the photograph of Emily into the notebook, sealing it beneath the earth once more. But now, it wasn't hidden in shame. It was buried with honor. As they stood side by side, Daniel whispered, "She'd be proud." Marcus answered softly, "So am I." And in that moment, both men knew they were changed forever.